about changes in the curriculum. So today we see a lot of interesting startups coming in. I think I understand that later in the day we have one founder who's going to talk about having a lot of extracurricular activities within education. So what kind of curriculum would you want to see, and do you think we can have more players who can help schools in setting up such a curriculum, schools and colleges in setting up such a curriculum?
The question will be, will entrepreneurs be able to do that? That will be the question here. To set up such a curriculum, you need, on the one hand, certain corporate experience, which has brought you about that expertise for that matter. On the other hand, some educational expertise will also be adequate in order to understand how the school versus corporate integration can go ahead. So I don't feel it's only entrepreneurs. Of course, government as well as other institutions, private or public, have to be there as well to support, not just financially, but resource-wise or even manpower-wise. So that is also an important factor. Entrepreneurs will play a role, but they cannot be sole players in this field.
Okay. So ever since lockdown, there has been a huge amount of interest which we're seeing in online MBA programs for school children.
Right.
In India, at least, where children are being asked to come up with a business model and present their business model for an app and so on. So there seems to be a lot of interest among parents in this online MBA program. So how do you think that would pan out both in the school education space and the higher education space?
I think from what I've seen during this lockdown, I feel that society as a whole needs to really relax and calm down, because they have been pushing even for white hat junior to 6-year-old kids to program on Python. And if you do that and if you jump kids in school into an MBA program, ultimately you are taking away their childhood and their adolescence. So I believe that all this hype of trying to create Steve Jobs or Bill Gates of the world has to stop, because this is only going to ultimately destroy us rather than help us in the long run. People are going to end up in anxiety, frustration, and other sort of psychological complications, which we cannot afford at the moment. And instead of creating talent, we'll be actually killing it. So I'm not really in favor of going into such innovations, so to call it, because ultimately it will really hamper our progress.
So my next question would be that when these online programs are gaining a lot of acceptance, how do you think that would affect the traditional sector? I mean, agreed, they're complementary and they're not in competition with each other, but what kind of an influence would it play on the traditional sector of schools and colleges when online programs are getting a lot of acceptance?
We will force all the physical schools or face-to-face schools to come in with a hybrid program. Ultimately, what I've realized is that online is fine, has its advantages, but also has lots of limitations. And many people might think that this is here to stay. This is here to complement the physical structure, but the physical structure will not really go away anytime soon, if at all it goes away, because ultimately we crave for that in-person and face-to-face interaction, where you can actually connect to people. On a camera, you cannot connect. I mean, yeah, you can see each other, you can connect on LinkedIn, but beyond that, nothing else. So there is not that in-depth interaction that you can really sit next to somebody else. So they're not in competition, certainly, and of course, they will help to complement each other, but they won't eliminate one another. That is not bound to happen.
And I thought of asking you a question. I mean, about 3 months back, I was talking to one school owner in a small town in Andhra Pradesh, a coastal town. So I asked him, what do you think all of this means for education space? He says technology is here to stay. I asked him, you guys didn't want to use technology, like say 1 year back. What has changed? He said, see, you taught us how to use a calculator. Now we know the comfort of using a calculator. So if you ask us to go back to paper, we probably won't, because we now understand what technology can do to us. So even after we get out of this crisis, we'll still probably embrace technology, because we see that it can make our teachers better, it can make our life better. So in that sense, what do you think the current context means for all the people who are trying to do meaningful stuff in technology space?
I think we need to be a bit careful with technology implementation. Is of course helpful in all possible ways that we have online platforms, but we cannot let technology lifestyle dominate the regular lifestyle. Otherwise, we'll become technology dependent, and the moment that something happens, and then we cannot use technology, we will actually be lost. So, calculator, of course, is an example, not comparable to what has happened during lockdown, but technology or online classes and so on will complement the current education system. But many teachers and students are really not so comfortable with it for simple reasons. If you keep staring at the screen for 8 hours straight, you will develop ophthalmological problems, eye problems, and that is bound to happen because of the lighting of the computer. So this won't happen during in-person classes, for example. And there are other medical reasons that can be attached to this: stress, anxiety, and so on and so forth. So there has to be a balance. It cannot be all online or physical. Nowadays, we will end up having some hybrid segment, like it's happening in the US or Europe, teaching from home and teaching in person at the same time.
Okay. And I'm sure all the audience joining in would be interested in one specific question, and that is, what do you think is the future of management education, going forward? And how do you think this narrative would have changed post-lockdown?
So nowadays, management education is going to mainly land into an area of artificial intelligence, machine learning, of course, deep learning, probably VR, AR, in combination with the regular management subjects. If I talk about Woxsen, what we have is this MBA with AI/ML, which is a specialized program on techno-managerial skills. So 60% of the program is programming on Python, Julia, developing machine learning and deep learning projects, and of course other alternative aspects. They have to publish a research paper, they have to develop a consulting project, and along the way they are learning all these marketing, finance, ops, and HR subjects, which are anyways helpful for their lifestyle. So this is the future of management education. Sole vanilla MBAs won't help anymore. So nowadays, all the redefinition of MBA has, or BBA education for the matter, or even PhD, has to come towards the technological side. Otherwise, we will really not be able to pull it through. Here in India or anywhere else in other country, talk about Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, they won't be able to come across with any successful admissions rates because it won't be demanded by the industry.
Okay, and how do you think this lockdown and the COVID situation has affected this narrative of the future of management education?
It has pushed it. It has pushed it ahead. It has helped implement technology in a larger scale and developing it further in a way that without the lockdown probably wouldn't have happened.
Okay, so if I'm an MBA student right now, so what is the most crucial insight for me to look up to given the current macroeconomic climate?
The problem with that question is from which country will the person come from? Because if you talk about India, there is a lot of family pressure, and that peer pressure also leads and influences your decisions. Most of the times, what I've seen in the wrong direction. So that question is something which actually will depend upon each individual's perspectives and desires. I cannot tell people what they can or cannot do with their future, but I can certainly clearly convey that what the industry is looking for. After talking to multiple owner CEOs, chairs of bank, multiple MNCs, they are looking for people with techno-managerial skills. Even if you're an engineer, even if you're even an architect, even whatever it might be, the MBBS, you will have to be able to manage people, have leadership skills, and ultimately be able to understand and comprehend technology, not necessarily programming, but yes, understanding what is happening and how it is happening, not programming by itself, which of course requires a different set of skills.
Sure. I understand that a lot of founders, especially EdTech entrepreneurs, have joined in to this discussion. We request you to keep sending in your questions. So we have Dr. Raul here who brings in his expertise in both the education side as well as technology side. So I'm sure there are a lot of interesting insights we can get out of him. So you can send in your questions. We're listening to the questions coming in from the audience too. So I request the audience to keep sending in your questions. So Dr. Raul, I wanted to ask you, like, what is, I mean, I think I kind of asked this before, but given that audience would be specifically interested in this question, um, what would your advice be for somebody who wants to create a meaningful startup in the education space?
Well, the focus, if you look from a business perspective, should be on the school. If you look from a long-run perspective, with some sort of society impact, that should be on the students. But the problem is that many schools or universities are not willing to invest that kind of money or make those such of investments. So they will have to be dealt with a dilemma. Either you're looking to actually make a difference or you're looking to make profits, whichever it might be. Entrepreneurs normally are starting a company in order to, on the one hand, develop their dreams, and secondly, to, of course, drive themselves because they are motivated into that direction, not necessarily profits. But you have to decide. If you're looking at the schools, then of course you have to look at the budget. If you're looking at students, then you look at their development and what they require. Ultimately, nowadays, augmented reality and virtual reality, as well as other tools such as AI or machine learning applications for taking attendance or developing curriculum, or even, for that matter, looking for possible professorship candidates on LinkedIn or Naukri.com. Such automated systems is what is actually going to drive and what can really be sellable to different institutions and what they will actually go for.
Okay. So one specific question which I wanted to ask basis our work of Deep Thought EdTech Ventures. We are an EdTech startup ourselves. So after lockdown, we saw a lot of openness among parents and students to try something online. So, I mean, I think as an entrepreneur, something interesting which I have seen is that you're now no longer bounded by geography. That when you're recruiting students to, I mean, I'm sure as an education organization, we would want to select students who align with our vision and also select teachers who align with the vision. So today, we have a 40-member team and we've picked passionate teachers all the way from, Delhi till Tamil Nadu and from Gujarat till Northeast. So what kind of an impact do you think it might create in the education space when somebody with a good thought process can truly be connected and can truly execute the education vision? So what kind of an opportunity would this be for people in the education space now that, I mean, we've always had technology, but people were probably not willing to give it a chance, saying that, physical is better than online. But now that people have actually gone online, what kind of an opportunity might it be for somebody who's working in the EdTech space?
It is a golden opportunity if you don't miss the train, because as we are moving out of this lockdown situation, and many startups are coming up on that particular platform, there is going to be again an overload of startups in the field. So the sooner you catch the train, the better. But then, once you have caught the train, it's also necessary for you to establish and settle and create a benchmark. As I said, I have come across this white hat junior with selling Python to 6-year-old guys. I don't see that a long-term sustainability. Yeah, it had invested a lot on advertising and it has become known because of that. But ultimately, I don't see that running in the long term because it's going to lead to various complications which I can easily foresee. So if you want to really go into the education sector from a technological space as a startup, then you need to look at the long term. What is going to be necessary later on, not just now. Now is something else. Now will be over in a couple of months. What is necessary in the next 2-3 years? How things will evolve. And as I said, universities are looking for mainly that, reducing all the administrative responsibilities and automating them for curriculum, for attendance, for classroom engagement, so on and so forth. So all these aspects which have been there for centuries is what we require to automate, because that is what takes the more time and of course manpower as well, and leads to human error.
So while you speak of an overload of startups, I can definitely tell you the cost of a lead has overshot. That for startups nowadays, digital marketing has become not so affordable. because there are too many funded startups which are competing for the audience out there. I'm told in the US market, the lead cost has multiplied like 3 times or 4 times or something.
Yeah, of course, it's bound to happen. This is my market ratio.
Yeah. So, I mean, at Deep Thought EduTech, I mean, we would love to have you come out and check it too. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we, get our students to listen to an interview of a Steve Jobs or listen to an interview of a Satya Nadella or Indra Nooyi or any of the business leaders. And we get them to ask very basic questions. Like one of the students was like, generally a CEO wears a blazer, but why is this Steve Jobs coming up in shorts? What's he trying to do? I mean, not the, online MBA kind of serious content, but just kids coming and asking their innocent questions. And there was one video around Steve Jobs talking of how marketing should be around values. And he talks about why he likes Nike's marketing and so on. And kids were having very interesting discussions on these videos, which they anyways watch online. So do you think these sort of possibilities can be tried out online now that you have because one problem in India has been that we've never really got too many competent individuals to interact with children.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of, I mean, in India, teaching has always been the, last choice for somebody who's not been selected in other industries. So the human resource in education space has always been a problem in India. So now that you have competent people who can log in online and who can teach people, so do you think these possibilities can be tried out with children to expose them to this 21st century perspectives?
Yeah, ultimately, of course, it can be done, but the question is, will the families support them after they watch that 10-minute video? A motivational video is just that, a half-an-hour pump, but after the pump, is there going to be sustainability? Is there going to be continuity in the family space? Because even if you can tell a kid that, yeah, he's the next Bill Gates, but in the family they call him useless, nothing will happen.
So there again, when we talk of using technology responsibly or in a sustainable way, we've also tried out something called Mother's School. So where we get mothers once a week and we get them to participate in Socratic discussions and we get them to discuss about technology and business. This was probably just not possible 1 year back because you needed to assemble them in one place, or even if you put a webinar, mothers would probably not log into a webinar. But now we're seeing them come in, log into Zoom, and then they're talking to children, they're having good dinner table conversations. So do you think there can be, I mean, while we look at all the societal problems, do you think those societal problems can be tackled through smart usage of technology as an enabler and not as a primary tool?
Yeah, of course. It can always help to tackle all these issues and be able to develop the social perception as a whole, which is very much necessary. I feel is the main problem, actually.
So we're having some very interesting questions coming in from the audience, Dr. Raul. The first question is, they would like your advice on if extreme focus on AI and ML without balancing fundamental subjects could lead to excessive supply of AI and ML scholars or experts. And what do you think about the balance between fundamental subjects and AI and ML?
So as I said, I can give you an example. The curriculum we have developed at Woxsen, basically, there's a misconception on the AML area worldwide, thinking that it's only for techies or people from engineering background, forgetting that actually the origin of this field was human psychology and cognitive psychology, not technology. Technology was the development tool, not the original conceptualization. So what we do, for example, here, there are multiple subjects on AI, multiple subjects on management, such as marketing and HR, but along the way, there are also subjects on cognitive psychology and neuroscience, which teach these guys how exactly you should think and how you should perceive this technology. The aim here is not to create programmers or backend developers or machine learning engineers. The aim here is to create team leaders that will lead these engineers. So not looking at people to program, and looking at people to understand how to program and lead others who will do that job, the back-end job, and guide them. You cannot lead a team that you don't understand what they're doing. So ultimately, that is the aim of this techno-managerial can call it life-wise education, where you train people to be aware, which is not what's happening nowadays.
So how do you think this objective could be achieved to give them this holistic view of technology and management?
Well, ultimately, we have balanced the curriculum out of some 2-year programs, so out of 36 subjects, there are approximately 60% of them are technical in nature, such as neural networks or machine learning applications, computer vision, and so on. And then the remaining part are the managerial ones, but we always link both. So if we take, let's say, computer vision as a subject, introduction to computer vision, we always relate it to the 4 P's of marketing and marketing case studies and see how these two interrelate and how the industry utilizes these applications. So this is how you balance it out, of course, without loading it too much on the technical side, but keeping it balanced out.
So the next question we have is, how do you scale an EdTech startup which requires both schools and universities to be an important stakeholder apart from just the students?
Yeah, you need to look at the institution in particular. You can one solution won't fit all. So you cannot just think that I develop this and I will apply to all schools and universities. That's not going to happen because those schools and universities, though they are established institutions, they are run by certain people, and those people have their own ideals and their own perceptions. They might think your idea is wonderful, or they might think your idea is pathetic, whichever they feel like it. And it has nothing to do with the vision, mission, and value of the institution itself. So you have to target the segment of those individuals who really feel that they actually will connect with you. But you cannot target the institution as a whole. You have to target those who actually manage and take decisions on behalf of the institution. Because those are the ones who are going to contract you, not the institution, not the particular vice chancellor or the chancellor, but the board of management, the board of studies is the one who's going to take the call. So you have to target there. And of course, be able to connect your product with their alignment of vision and development in the future.
So the next question we have is whether micro degrees or short-term certificate courses would be sufficient or rather than the full-fledged courses for AI and ML.
Problem here is that I've seen many people during the lockdown overloading Coursera, EdTech, and all these platforms, and thinking that I do a 10 hours course on introduction to Python, and I'm already a Python expert, and I'll put in my LinkedIn also, I'm Python expert. We have to be very clear about one thing. Expertise and mastery or development of skills come after years of practice. It doesn't come on an overnight course or a 2 months course that you do and it's done. So short-term courses are good to complement, are good to add to your skills. I also done them just to review past applications or maybe past theories, or maybe try to learn new things such as, let's say, design thinking, for example. But they are not meant to be your sole and only purpose or qualifications. Then you will be lagging behind. That is the problem. People have to perceive this. These are complementary courses, not the only sole core courses.
And the fourth question is personally my favorite. I'm sure everybody is asking this question now. That when we talk of the millennials, attention seems to be a big problem. So how do we tackle this challenge of attention?
Yeah, people talk about attention because they don't understand them in the first place. Now they won't understand them. They just classify them as immature or illogical, or maybe not having enough motivation or drive in life. And if that's the case, then it's your job to motivate them, not your job to criticize them. And ultimately, yeah, there's an attention challenge that can happen due to various reasons. One, if you're at home, distractions. Two, the faculty is not entertaining or engaging enough, which is normally the case. Or the last one is the actual individual, the student, might have some sort of undiagnosed psychological problem related to attention, which is out of your purview. You cannot take care of that. That should have been diagnosed, but it has not been, so you cannot really do anything about the same. But ultimately, what you can do is obviously connect with them on a personal level and understand what exactly attracts them and how to teach them. One way of teaching won't be deemed fit for all the students. You cannot teach all the students technical and expect them to understand. And in fact, you have to give them some learning tool. For example, I have taken some courses on Python for people who had no knowledge about it, and we just play a game. If you know there are multiple games you can play to teach them Python. So it's a way of engaging them on an interactive tool without directly opening Jupyter Notebook and overloading them, which is not going to fly because statistics and maths and algebra, they will not understand it. Instead, on a practical application way, they will comprehend it, and attention will be drawn towards me instead towards something else which is in the house. So that's one of the options which is available.
So, I mean, one important concern here is that of instant gratification. When students are used to instant gratification, especially with a lot of mobile technologies which they're exposed to, how do you think we've got to deal with that? I mean, what are the long-term psychological implications of somebody getting used to instant gratification?
It will directly lead into anxiety and disappointment very, very, very soon, because ultimately life doesn't run on those bases. Success comes after a very, very long journey, not immediately. So that is something that we will have to deal with on the way. To be very frank, I also don't have an answer for that. But I've been observing it. I've been observing how depression kicks in very quickly, and something we have to tackle on personal basis, not as a group.
I think the fourth question you already answered, how to engage students well in the online setup or in a school setup. I think you've already answered about the need for personalization. The next question is, there seems to be this perception that schooling has all become very commercial, and now will homeschooling be an alternative option for students?
See, schooling at university has always been commercial. I don't know what is about the era of commercial schooling. This has always been the case. I mean, Harvard University charges you $200,000 for a degree, which is not better than the degree that you can get from Hyderabad University. So it's not about the degree, it's not about the environment, it's not even about the infrastructure. It's about that they're selling you a brand like Apple. So ultimately, you're getting the same. If homeschooling is better or not, that depends upon who is delivering that homeschooling. Are the parents or those family members or those tutors able to actually deliver the same kind of content or quality? That is up to yourself, you to answer, not to me. But one thing I'm clear about, education is a business, and it has always been a business. Of course, there are certain outputs to it, obviously. Society has created it in that way, but do not trick yourself into thinking that education is a non-for-profit kind of business, because it is a very profitable business if done correctly. And you can look at the Ivy League institutions as well.
In the Indian context, education has always been seen with a certain sense of sanctity. We have this saying called Guru Deva Bhava, where teacher is considered a god. So this whole idea of education for the sake of profit seems to be not very comfortable for parents in general. And secondly, now that we have a large section of our population who's now educated, so the parents now feel that maybe they can participate more in the education of their children. So do you think this would play a role? And because there seem to be a lot of parents now who feel alienated from the mainstream system because they do not like profit being the primary driver of education, rather than the traditional Indian value of looking at education as a responsibility.
The problem is, when they are going to try to go for higher education, will those universities recognize that homeschooling as something valid? Because you have to think that this is a business. It's a business from KG till higher education. So everything will be interconnected. And they will not, many countries do not accept homeschooling as an option.
But then there are a lot of students in India who do homeschooling till, say, 8th grade, and then switch to a mainstream school in the last few years.
That depends upon who is teaching them, of course. How can I comment on their parents' capabilities if I not know them? So it depends upon their own personal capabilities.
So I have one last question for you. Our first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, had a very interesting vision for all the universities in India way back in 1940s. He said that humanities and social sciences have to be given a lot of importance in every university department to humanize education and to bring in the larger context of technology. He said, you engineers can make something, but the greatest material is human material. You've got to understand how your technology can be relevant in the societal context. So now, while you speak of leadership and while you speak of technology being managed well and so on, do you think India needs to, because in India, liberal arts or humanities or social sciences are not given as much emphasis. It's all like STEM, which we go into. So do you think universities can promote social sciences and humanities so children get that critical thinking and also that societal awareness?
Problem is that the education system has turned to become some goal-oriented tool rather than a process-oriented tool. The goal is to get a job, and that has become a very problematic era because actually the areas of psychology, economics, anthropology, sociology are very critical. People take them as if you can not enroll in any other course, you enroll there. So that is not the case. Actually, those will be the most valuable and enriching degrees that you can get because they will question your human capabilities and your human philosophy as well. And the reason why it's not being demanded is because of the job market. So whether the universities will be able to promote it more or not, until the job market changes, and in India, mainstream degrees like engineering, architecture, MBBS, MBA stop being the trend, it's going to be very difficult because the industry is pushing the education system to go in that direction. It's not like universities don't want it, but the industry doesn't hire such individuals. Only Google has started recently to hire philosophers. Earlier, it was not happening.
So would you have any concluding remarks, Dr. Raul?
Yeah, I can quickly wrap it up by just saying nowadays when it comes to both startups jumping into the education sector, as well as students or parents, whoever might be watching, you have two choices post-COVID, which is either you get busy living or you get busy dying. And right now is an era to really embrace change, to really believe that you can do, that you will do, and you must do some changes in society, rather than just going for the profit-making capabilities, which is not really going to enrich in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Raul. That was a very interesting conversation we've had where I think Dr. Raul, being an educator himself, has put forward some very important caveats which parents, entrepreneurs, educators all have to pay attention to, because there are a lot of long-term repercussions of what we do in education. So I hope these perspectives will help us in being more responsible citizens so that the next generation is given the best possible education to take the economy forward. Thank you, Dr. Raul.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And also the your strategy to actually recruit good faculty who are quite, I would not say competent, but who have the right mindset, to kind of engage with students in a project-based learning environment. Because even for students also, it's a relatively new experience to get into a techno management course. And you rightly said, you have focus on neuro linguistics or psychology or cognitive sciences, right? And it's true that it's not just about technology or programming, as you said. It's more about the perspective of how to use it, or if they become leaders in a particular technology or lead a particular project, then it's all about getting having the manage a tech team or to lead a kind of a tech savvy sort of project. So having said that, right, and these are some of the hardest skills on the planet. Right? I mean, perhaps a little managing tech is probably a little more harder than doing tech itself. I mean, we can always have very objective ways of looking at it, but if you see, as a B school who's into an innovative sort of play, right? Not many people perhaps are doing an MBA in AIML, and as you said, it's not just a expertise in AIML, but it's a 360 degree of understanding a lot of connected areas. For example, the fundamentals of math is so needed, probability is needed, statistics, and sometimes it's just the psychology that's so needed to understand, to avoid cognitive biases when you design algorithms. So if it's in such a complex sort of a area, right, where you're trying to understand both business side of things and the tech side of things. So what could be, how have you been managing the right culture in terms of getting folks, getting the right teachers, right faculty?
Yeah, I don't coach individuals, I coach teams. So ultimately, we might not have Harvard-like faculties, but we have the best faculty we can have in this team. And we make them work along that. So we know that most of them are from IIMs or University of Hyderabad or sorts. So there are people who are obviously born and brought up in India. And hence this kind of approach of knowing the culture here also helps a lot developing the student's mindset. But on the other hand, it also helps me on having that leg that I have somebody who will understand the local mindset, and I can bring in international best practices of various kinds. There are multiple of them, such as sending weekly motivational emails to the students, such as connecting with the students on one-to-one basis on something we call open houses, where we connect with them individually and we let them speak instead of us talking all the time. So that's something we normally do as well. And we have a very student-focused culture where students are supposed to come to the classroom with a mindset of interaction, not with expectations of having a monologue. We are not here to give monologues. We are not comedians. We don't come and talk for 90 minutes. That is never the case. We come and interact with them. We ask, most of the time the students talk rather than us talking. So that is a very important factor where they feel they are not just there in the class, but they are part of the lecture time.
No, it's an interesting thing. We're not monologues or stand-up comedians or the act of people. I think that is a fundamental difference. So do you what kind of, just a closing thing I wanted to know is in terms of the practices that you have, specifically in case studies, right? So one of the things is the field of techno management is still evolving. A lot of you would have a lot of, for example, case studies on strategy and marketing. But how do you for example, get projects or case studies that are relevant to say AI/ML application and management? Because it's still a very fundamentally evolving thing. So I would just be very much interested to know, how do you manage very realistic sort of problem solving or a case study driven thing in a new kind of emerging field like AI/ML driven management studies?
We're normally given a theoretical context, and then we ask them to either take an existing case or we ask them to develop a case. For example, let's say if we take Samsung Electronics and we ask them to take any chatbot that they have developed, how will you implement this in airports or in Delhi airport or in Mumbai airport, and take the map or the floor plan of Mumbai airport and tell me exactly where will you place them, what's the purpose, how will be the reaction of in this case, the passengers, and how things will flow around. So it's a very realistic, real-time kind of case study, which we really embrace for them.
Okay, awesome. I think it's nice to see the kind of innovation that you've been doing. So we'll stay connected, Dr. Raul. Thanks for your time once again. I think we've had a splendid kind of Q&A. Thank you, Tarun, for moderating this panel so well. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So those of you who are attendees, we have the next panel, next session coming up at 2 p.m. It's basically to discuss the role of personalized content and assessments in the K-12 space. We have the founder of MyPal, and this session would be moderated by Ashish. And yeah, so please join back 2 p.m. So thanks, guys. We'll see you there.